Welcome to the Learning Reinvented Podcast, brought to you by myself, Katie Godden, and the team at The Learning Effect. There are lots of learning podcasts out there, so we wanted to do something slightly different. This week, we'll be talking to someone who started a new L&D role in lockdown. I'm delighted to welcome Leigh Maxfield to the podcast. Leigh, do you want to introduce yourself and tell our listeners a little bit about your background and what you're currently up to?
Yeah, of course. Hi. I'm been in L&D 10 years. You're going to have to bear with my career journey. It's a bit of a weird one. I started serving hot dogs out of a window at Alton Towers when I was 16. Thought it was going to be a stopgap just for a bit of beer money. That turned into a couple of years, and I progressed up there, looking after all the learning and development for the food and beverage department. After a few moves within Merlin, so I moved down to be F&B manager for Warwick Castle, commercial manager at Sea Life Weymouth with the fish, and then I got a group role within Merlin as a food and beverage trainer, which took me all around the world. Opening some iconic attractions such as Legoland Japan, Legoland Dubai, Legoland Discovery Centre in Philadelphia, as well as the Bear Grylls Adventure in Birmingham, where you can swim with sharks and you can do an assault course. And as well as doing the new openings, we also looked at the development of the team as well. So I did a lot of team leader coaching, team leader development, as well as manager development for food and beverage as well. We rolled out the global LMS, which was interesting. And then I moved into hotels. I moved into Melia Hotels International, where I looked after the food and beverage L&D department. There for 4 hotels, 3 in London and one in Manchester, ranging from a 5-star luxury brand to a 4-star business hotel. We did some cool stuff there. So we did a cluster induction, so we got everybody together, kind of reshape our whole L&D offering there to fit where the business was trying to get to. Then in June this year, I moved into being an L&D consultant for Thames Water, which, going from hospitality to utilities, is a bit of a strange one, but really enjoyable. And we're looking at competency frameworks and development frameworks for the whole organisation. Working off a new workforce architecture. So that's where we're at right now.
Cool. So you've had quite a long career in L&D. What made you want to pursue a career in learning and development?
So it goes back to my first ever shift in Alton Towers and serving hot dogs out of a window. On my first day, I had a half-day induction with HR. It was all nice, happy, clappy, telling me about how the resort came about, and all health and safety procedures. And the second half of the day, I was given a uniform and said, "Off you go. Here's your till login. Kind of start serving." So I was happily start serving. A couple of hours. I thought I was doing really well. But then I got a guest complaint because I didn't know there was 2 types of hot dogs. I didn't know if there was a small and a large hot dog. I give this guest a small hot dog, but put through the till a large hot dog, and I felt so and success. That I vowed to make sure that nobody ever felt the way that I felt on that day. And I think that's what L&D is all about. I think it's about being useful and setting people up an individual up for the success that they could be and the best that they could be. And the before I started pursuing my career in L&D, the interactions of workplace learning that I had, I just thought we could do a bit better. They were too reminiscent of school, where you had a test at the end, you sat there and listened to somebody, and you had a 200-page PowerPoint to go through. And I just thought, actually, learning is a constant process that could be done a bit better. So I then started looking into kind of where we can go, and that's how I got the role at Alton Towers, looking at all the learning and food and beverage for the resort, because my passion came through from the F&B director, who kind of took me under his wing and kind of gave me that chance, and the rest is history. And it all started with a hot dog.
That's a pretty cool story to have, though, to be fair. So obviously, like in that role, you were lucky enough to obviously travel around the world, and not a lot of people obviously get to do that. What did you learn from that experience?
So yeah, I got to travel to some weird and wonderful places. Some I would love to go back to, some not in a rush. What I learned, and I can tell you a bit of an anecdote after, is not one size fits all. So I developed a leader boot camp, which was a 2-day kind of interactive boot camp for your first time leaders. And so all the skills that a first time leader would need that we wouldn't give them, because in the past what we would do is say, you're promoted to a leader, here's a new coloured lanyard and go lead a team. And unsurprisingly, we found a lot of people were not set up for success, and we had a lot of issues with that. So this kind of boot camp, if you will, was designed to set them up for success and give them the necessary skills to kind of take them to the next level. So I started doing it at Thorpe Park and Legoland Windsor. It was a massive success. I had my ego boosting feedback forms were all 555s. I thought, oh, brilliant. I found a global solution. So then I went to Legoland Billund in Denmark, which is the first Legoland that was built, and Billund is the home of Lego. Interesting fact, Lego has 2 planes sitting in Billund Airport.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So I started doing my normal kind of energetic icebreaker and went through the day, and halfway through the first day, one of the delegates was saying, I don't really get what we're doing. I was like, what do you mean we don't get what you're doing? I said, well, I want to talk through, and I've got some questions. And it made me realise that actually what I did in the UK and what I did for these people at Chesington at Thorpe Park is not going to work for the Danish people, because they like to talk and they like to collaborate a little bit more. So after that, then I really started taking an individual approach to all my workshops and all the boot camps that I ran. So instead of going in with a set kind of, what's a better word, lesson plan, have just a loose structure of what you're going to do, and then react to what the people are telling you, what your delegates are telling you on the day. And I doing one session was at Legoland Windsor again, where I put all the topics and all the skills that I thought a leader would have, and then the icebreaker was them putting it on a roadmap and binning a couple, so they actually shaped the day. And it really got them, well, they really were invested, because actually I was just doing stuff that they wanted to learn. and do and take forward, instead of me just prescribing the prescribing the learning for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so you're getting other people involved, making it more collaborative, and kind of like making sure that people are obviously invested in what they're doing as well. And then obviously it helps it flow a little bit more, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you're just not saying this is what you need, this is what you need. They're telling me what they need.
Yeah.
And rather kind of, instead of using my Mystic Meg powers to say, well, that person, and not a broad brush approach saying, well, if you're a first time leader, you need communication skills. You're saying, right, okay, you might have that because you've actually gone through the process and been promoted to a first time leader. So let's have a look at where your gaps are, instead of giving that broad brush approach. And also, every culture is different, especially when I went to Japan, and training through an interpreter is really difficult.
I bet.
But their culture to learning is different, because you're seen as the expert, where actually in the States, in the UK, you're not. You're the facilitator of that learning. You're the guy. You're guiding them through that learning journey. Where in Japan, and this is my experience and not a broad brush kind of statement, but in Japan I was seen as the expert in the topic that I was talking about, which is an interesting kind of dynamic of where you need to take it and what you need. How do you need to change your approach to different cultures in the world?
So obviously you changed your approach based on your experiences. Did you start to see results off the back of that? Because obviously you said that you had really great feedback here, and then obviously it was different in Denmark. But when you did change that approach, were you starting to see the results? Were things getting implemented quickly, etc.?
Yeah, and because I was started to listen to them rather than dictating to them, then they were just, I was learning stuff from them, and I was learning where their pinch points and their problems were. And go back to why I got into L&D. I was just being useful for that individual rather than the collective. And to your point, a lot, then when I did my follow-up visit, I had just individuals coming up to me and said, oh, I tried that thing that you told us about, and it really worked, thank you, but I've tweaked it a little bit. I was like, that's great, you tweak, you change, just. And I can remember one person coming up to me and said, oh, we touched on this on your workshop, and I've done a bit more research into it, and this is what I found out. Can we have a chat about it? And I was like, wow, that is learning its best, to inspire somebody to then go, oh, I'm really interested in that. I'm going to have a look and Google and learn a bit more. That is actually what you want to do. You don't want to, you're not going to solve world peace in an 8-hour workshop, but what you can do is inspire them to take it further and learn and make mistakes through it as well.
Yeah, that must be quite fulfilling as a trainer as well, for you in your role.
It's probably the best feedback you can get, I think, when you've had somebody come up to you and say, you've changed the way I manage my team, or you've changed the way I do things, or I'm getting things done that I'd never thought I'd be able to. That is better than any number that somebody can put on a feedback form.
Yeah, definitely, because it's actual feedback, isn't it?
And you're having in direct kind of impact onto the guest and onto paying customers, and that's what I love, because I come from an operational role, is I don't want learning shouldn't be so detached from the end result, which is either you get on a roller coaster, you get served your food, or you get water out of your tap. It shouldn't be that detached from that, and that's what you need. That's what I keep in my mind, is that's the ultimate goal, to make sure that we're effective and doing whatever we're doing and delivering. But you might have to take kind of 2 steps back from that to enhance that process, to make sure that you're affecting the business results. And then you can go to your stakeholders and go, look, I've done this learning. Instead of saying we've got great feedback or we've got great participation, I'm saying that we did this learning, and this is your hard-earned cash, or this is the result in hard facts and figures. Because what, in my experience, and especially in communities, they're great with if you stand up and say, yeah, we had this participation, this many people did e-learning, this many people give us 5s. Well, that's great, but they're not really bothered about that. They're bothered about how you're going to make their business better.
Yeah, your return on investment. I think in learning, people often don't look at that data, because it's easy to say how many courses have been done, but actually how much time and money are you spending on delivering those courses, and how effective are they really? And I think that people tend to lose that.
Yeah, I just don't think we fly the flag enough for us. We're a bit going, oh yeah, we only did one part. We're actually that one part that you did probably had a massive ripple effect. So be proud of what you've done.
Yeah.
And don't, just because it's an operational result doesn't mean you haven't affected it. So fly your own flag, rather than say, oh no, I only did one little part. Kind of fly the L&D, fly the learning flag.
Yes, yeah. So obviously you said that you started a new role in the summer of this year during the COVID pandemic. How have you found that? How was your onboarding experience compared to starting jobs when we didn't have COVID?
Yeah. Well, can you remember a time without COVID?
No, well, yeah, it does seem like a while ago now.
Well, I'm not going to beat around the bush. It was weird. It was so bizarre that Monday morning in the summer, sitting at my dining room table, I went from one day being unemployed to then another day opening my laptop and being an employee of Thames Water. Completely baffled me. And even weirdly, like on my first day, at the end of the day, I didn't know when to shut off. And I didn't know, like, because normally when you're in the office, you can just say, oh, you can see people leaving, whereas when you're at home, you can't see people leaving. But that was weird. But then my onboarding was great, and my line manager was absolutely fantastic. We went through quite a lot on Teams and having them conversations, and what I found onboarding remotely is I was having more meaningful conversations with people. Because you were doing it over Teams or over virtually over the laptop. I felt that I was having a really poignant, meaningful conversation with people, because you can't just ring when you're new, you can't just ring people up and say, oh, can we have a chat?
Yeah. You have to arrange it. I guess, like when you're in an office, you can go and have a chat with someone and it can be about anything, because you're physically there. But obviously you can't just pop something in someone's diary and just talk about random things. You have to have a purpose.
Yeah. And having them purposeful conversations was really useful and kind of got me up to speed quite quickly. But what I did miss is them, I just bumped to you in a corridor kind of conversations.
Making a cup of tea, having a coffee.
Yeah, and seeing people in the canteen and talking about the TV that you've watched the night before or whatever. But it's been really interesting, and the Thames has done a really good job of kind of making sure that we're integrated into the culture quite quickly, because we're on a short-term project. Kind of working through that quite quickly was amazing, and we've had loads of kind of the HR director put similar minds together and did an introduction call that was really good, because I would never have interacted with a reward consultant before, but a reward consultant joined at the same time as me, and we had this we kind of got together and just had a chat really, and said, this is strange. Yes, we're in the same boat. This is strange. And you felt I've never felt that I was alone, and I've always felt like I could reach out to somebody and have just a random conversation about the TV. And I'm really nosy and looking at and seeing people's back walls.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Really insight into them as well. So people's kids have been popping in that you'd never know before. People's dogs, people's husbands, people's wives delivering cups of tea. So
but I think that has been interesting. Like, I know that I work from home all the time anyway, but it's hard to get used to that. And like you said, knowing when to switch off. But I think it's helped people feel a bit more relaxed and a bit more human, because I think you go into work and you've got that persona and you've got your work persona, but when you take a step back, and when you're in your house, people obviously don't ever see that side of you. So I think that's been nice. And we've been chatting to people as well. Sorry.
Yeah, and in a corporate world, everybody's mask is slipped off. And it's really good to see people from who like their best, because they're at home relaxed, and they're actually being quite productive because you're not being distracted by anything. You can see people for who they are and what they want to do, and having the kind of consultancy conversations that we're having about skills, roles, and kind of where you want to take your team and what you're trying to achieve. It's meant that they've opened up a lot quicker because they know nobody's eavesdropping. Or they don't have to watch what they say because you're in a safe space, because it's a two-way conversation. It's been really good, and it's really helped kind of get to the crux of things quite quickly, where it would have taken 5 meetings before we got to the crux of it, which is amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you briefly mentioned about the skills, and there's a lot at the moment, and people are looking at skills in the workforce. And how do you think you'd approach that? And do you see any challenges, like given the current climate and what's going on?
Yeah. So I think it's interesting, because I think the predictions of what skills we would need in 2020, in 2019, are now completely out of date and completely wrong, a bit like the American polls. Because we need, I know resilience was on there, but I think kind of we need resilience more now than we did forever, than ever before. And I think teams are interacting differently now than they would do if they were in the office. I think communication is now changed, of what we class as good communication. But I think the first starting point of if any L&D people are listening to this and thinking, I don't know where to start, is not asking people what they want to learn, but asking leaders what they want to achieve in their teams, and using that as your opener to kind of get out there and pick the skills for what they're trying to achieve, not what their team needs to learn. Because I think there's a difference between, I think once you've asked that question of what you're trying to achieve, you're going to get a better answer than a list of orders if you ask what you're trying to learn. once you've got that kind of vision that they're trying to do, you can really add value to them as an individual and an individual team, rather than ticking off loads of learning requests. Because if I go to the project management team, everybody will say, I want Prince 2. But actually, is that what they're trying to achieve in that team? Maybe, I don't know.
It's just what people know. People understand project management, Prince 2, they go together.
Yeah, instead of looking actually what are the skills that you need, and how do you manage virtually is an interesting one. How do you lead virtually? And the skills of a leader has completely changed. Luckily, well-being was always on the agenda, but always bubbling away under the surface. But now I think, because of the weird year that 2020 has been, I think it's now really it's at the top of everybody's list. And how do you manage your team's well-being is at the top of everybody's list now. I think the challenge is how do you react to the world around you when you're looking at kind of developing your skills and developing your competitive frameworks or your development frameworks or whatever you want to do. The world 2020 and 2021, potentially 2022, is going to be completely different to what we've ever seen before. I think the weirdness has just started, and I think it's going to be a kind of a shifting target. So I think we need to keep in touch with that, and kind of keep our fingers on the pulses with it. So I don't think you can nobody hand on heart can say this framework is future proof.
Yeah.
These are the skills, these are the future proofing skills that we need in our business, because actually I don't think anybody can predict what they are. So I think we are going to need to be as proactively reactively as we can to what the world and what the business world will need. But I think as a starting point to that, though, I think we need to define what good looks like within our teams. And if I say I'm looking for a water technician, well, what does a good water technician look like? What skills do they need? What knowledge do they need? What technical skills do they need? And really doubling down on what actually does that foundational good look like, and then building on top of that for the future proofing side of things for 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, it's a bit of unknown, isn't it? And everything's ever changing, and we need to work in a bit more of a flexible and agile way. And like COVID has been the catalyst for that, and hopefully it does kind of shake things up in a positive way, as much as being locked in the house isn't very nice, etc. but hopefully it can actually we can start to see improvements, especially in the learning space. Yeah,
and I think COVID has and the way the world has changed is accelerated what learning leaders were trying to do anyway. About this individual approach, this collaboration, social learning, digital learning. People were chipping away at that already, but I think it's just brought it to the forefront, center stage, to say this is how we're going to learn from now on. And I don't think there's any going back from it now. I think people have seen that the value that learning can have in a business, and I think if the organization and the learning organization has reacted well, I think you're onto a winner, and you've really proved yourself as a resilient function within the team, within the organisation.
Yeah, because I think learning that always kind of, it like in budgets it always gets cut and things like that. Whereas now, but now you've obviously you're having to train people on different things and react really quickly to situations and the ever-changing guidance, etc. So it does highlight how important it is for organizations to have good learning and being able to communicate that out to their people effectively.
Because I think the communication element of learning has been really what I've seen from different organizations and in my role now has been excellent, and we've kind of we've tapped into the marketeers and we've really used that. So if you think of learning as a service, we've really used our entrepreneurial skills to kind of use the marketing skills to get people excited again about learning. I think people have had, working from home, have had this space to go, do you know what, I'm going to learn something new, and I'm going to learn, I'm trying to do this. I wonder if something can help me to do this faster, better, quicker. And we've really benefited from the learning space in some organizations, I think. And it really makes me think about how detrimental potentially an office environment is.
How do you mean?
It's a bit controversial, but I think how much time was wasted in an office. Because we've seen a lot of more people have that headspace when they're at home to work, to kind of be more productive and have that headspace to learn and kind of be a bit more vulnerable, to say, do you know what, I'm trying to achieve this, but I don't know how to.
And you're on your own a little bit more, aren't you? Obviously, in your house, it's kind of just you can't kind of hide it under the carpet, because if you're not doing what you're meant to be doing, I think working from home highlights that a lot more. Than in what it did before. Like in an office, you can kind of not pass blame. I think that's the wrong way to say it, but you can kind of skirt around it and avoid it a bit easier.
Because even personally, outside of work, I learned stuff over lockdown that I was meaning to learn for ages. So we have a bathroom. This is going to sound really boring, but it's poignant. I had a bathroom fan that was making a noise. I was like, I've got nothing else better to do. I'm gonna go onto Google, go onto YouTube and fix it. Or I've learned how to make sourdough bread like everybody else.
Was it good?
Did you learn anything over lockdown?
I haven't, not specific like that, but I think it, like you said, when something comes up, you Google it. And I personally, that's what I think you should be able to do at work. So that's what I'm hoping that we'll get to eventually in organizations. You'll get to the point where you can go onto a learning platform or whatever technology you've got, or an app or whatever, and you can actually find out what you need for your job instantly, like how we do, like you said, fixing your fan or fixing the washing machine or whatever. It's so easy and it's so simple, and people don't think of that as learning, which I think is a funny way of looking at it, because you are learning something, you're learning a new skill, you learn how to fix something. But obviously people have a perception of learning in work is slightly different. So they see it as going on and doing a school course or attending a physical workshop or whatever it is. And actually you're learning all the time anyway, we just don't realise it. And even like you said about using like marketing and reflecting that into learning as well. We're constantly consuming information, and again, that's learning. So I think if our mindsets hopefully will change and we'll start to have that understanding, and hopefully we can then start reflecting that in organizations.
Because I go back to, how did you learn to walk or ride a bike? Well, you didn't do an e-learning course or go on a workshop, did you? You got up, you fell down a little bit, and then you tried again. And I think, and there's so much learning that goes on that you just don't realize, and I think you need to appreciate that. And you mentioned Google. Google's easy to access and doesn't pigeonhole people. Now, if we're going to use that as a benchmark, I think what we need to do in L&D organization in L&D is go, well, what is the advantages of we've got that Google hasn't? Well, we've got the knowledge of our organization, and we can apply the learning so it benefits our employees quicker, because they know how we do it. Because that's the biggest thing about learning and joining an organization. I know how to have a consultancy, have a conversation with somebody, but how to have a conversation around with somebody around Thames or around here, it's putting learning in the context of what they're trying to do, rather than, oh, here's the theory, now go try it.
Yeah. But you can have your Google bits, because obviously some things, I always use the example of fire safety training. I don't know why people make their own fire safety training, because all organisations, fires are made, and that's how they're made. You know what I mean? It's not different between organisations. But why go out and brand stuff and make it more personal when you don't need to? But you can then slip your policies in and things like that. And then you're kind of curating, and you're still making it more personal to your business and branding it slightly, but you don't need to over brand stuff, and just make it easy for people. Yeah.
And do the hard work for your end users, and find the best resources that Google have to offer and put them into your LMS. Into your learning platform, because you've done the hard work for them, because Google's got amazing resources, and just use it and be a bit bold and steal it.
Yeah, but I think you'll see people start to do that more, especially with budgets being cut and things like that, and people not being in the office. You're not going to be able to spend 3 months creating a course anymore, because people are at home, and you want, hopefully everyone's using learning platforms or something like that to push information out to. So you're actually probably going to be able to target a lot more people than are selected for you. And you're kind of opening up the information, as opposed to just, like you said, pigeonholing people.
Yeah, saying we use the GROW framework in here, and that's what you're going to use. Nothing else exists. Well, it does exist, and it might work better for that person.
Yeah.
It's going back to being useful and remembering every individual learns differently.
Yeah.
And what they're trying to achieve, rather than what you want them to learn.
Put the objective first.
Yeah, or put the business result first, really. Well, the individual result first, really.
Yeah. Cool. So where do you think that you'll go with your career next? Obviously, you've just started your job.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting one, because I've been thinking about. Well, I've been thinking about it, and I don't know where my career would go, but I know what culture I want to be in. So I want to be in a culture where we have got that individual approach, and it's appreciated, and I want to be in a role where I can really change the learning problems, and take problems that are affecting the business, and really use learning to leverage the solution. And having that direct impact into the end result, which either that be a utility, or that be a service-based organization. So I'd really like to kind of be in that kind of role where I can define what the learning landscape looks like, and kind of set the learning vision, because you're never going to change a learning in an organization overnight. But I think the slowly measured approach will really help, and using data and collecting that data, so you're actually not making predictions, and you're not getting your L&D crystal ball out. You've got kind of good solid data that this is what people need,
You're creating a purpose.
Yeah, you and you're where L&D is seen as a value add a value add department rather than a budget drainer. And a nice to do. It's a need to do, definitely not a nice to do. So yeah, that's where I want to be. I don't know if that organisation exists anywhere.
No, well, it might do. You never know. Things are changing all the time.
Yeah.
So it might do somewhere. But cool. Thank you so much for joining us today, Leigh. It's been really great to talk to you. If people want to carry on the conversation, what's the best way of them contacting you?
Yeah, so they can find me on LinkedIn. Or they can so just search my name. Ali IGH is the first name, and then Max and Field. Or on Twitter, so at Leigh_Max. Also, I've got a blog on WordPress, which we'll put in the show notes that you can have a look at as well, where I've got a series of 10 blogs, and I'm just in the process of writing another 10. So you can go and kind of have a look and have a delve into my mind.
Cool. Thank you very much.